Good evening. Wow, look at all the people here today. Must be Money Day. All right, welcome to the January 29, 2025 meeting of the Town of Plymouth, Massachusetts Advisory and Finance Committee at the Great Hall of Town Hall in Plymouth. We will go right to the roll call to see who on our committee is here today. And I will start with Ms. Butler. Are you here?
I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn, are you here?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Howard?
Here.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Here.
Mr. Malaguti?
Here.
Mr. Pizarro?
Here.
Ms. O'Connor?
Here.
Ms. Richards?
Here.
Mr. Snyder?
Here.
Ms. Tompkins?
Here.
And Mr. Trudell? Wow, we have a full house. Awesome. Thank you. All right. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format with some of us here physically, and as you can see in the back, a number of our members and the public are participating via Zoom. This meeting will be airing on Comcast 9, Verizon 47, and on PAC TV's YouTube channel, which can be viewed at pactv.org/stream. The ground rules here: any speaker giving public comment is allotted up to 5 minutes in which to speak. Public comment can be made at the beginning of the meeting, the end of the meeting, or at any time there's an article to which you would like to be heard on. Anyone can attend our meetings virtually as well, including members of the public, by using Zoom, using either the app on your computer or on your phone, and using meeting code 995-2986-0638. That's 995-2986-0638, and then using our meeting passcode, which is 100131. You may also access our meeting through your telephone. We will not be able to see you, but we will hear you, and that phone number is 929-205-6099, and meeting code is the same, 995-2986-0638, and the meeting password is 10031. The views of the members of this committee are their own opinions and do not necessarily reflect the majority view of this committee. Having said that, would anybody like to start off with a public comment? Okay, hearing and seeing none, we will go right to the annual town meeting article review, Article 2, revolving funds spending cap. And we have Lynn Barrett, the Town of Plymouth Finance Director.
Good evening.
Thank
So
you,
I'm
Liz.
just going to start out with an introduction regarding this article. So this article is an annual article every year that we do for all of the revolving funds that have previously been established by town meeting and are part of our town's general bylaws. What we have to do at town meeting every year is the department has to request their spending threshold for their particular revolving account. And what the spending threshold means is they can spend up to that amount of money on an annual basis, providing that they have, one, the funds in that account to spend, and that it pertains to the bylaw, description of what they can spend the money on. So this article just establishes the spending threshold for each of those revolving accounts that's already been established in the bylaw. And in your packets, on an annual basis, we have to provide a report to town meeting, to the public, regarding the activity, summary of the activity in those funds, the previous year's beginning balance, the receipts, the expenditures, the ending balance, and then the first 6 months of the calendar year, of the year, fiscal year this year. So that report is included in your packets, and then also included is a memo from each and every department who is responsible for that revolving account. We also, and any information that they would have added to their memos. This year, in addition to last year, what we did for the committee was we included all those revolving account memos and information in your 3-ring binder budget book. That way, when you met with your individual departments, if you had any questions regarding those revolving accounts, hopefully you would have addressed those questions at that time. If not, there are representatives from each department here tonight to answer any questions that you may have on any particular revolving account. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Barrett. We'll open the floor to our members for questions for Ms. Barrett, and I see a hand over in Mr. Green. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Question for Ms. Barrett. Have any towns, given the restrictions on these funds, you can't spend more than you have and you can't spend more than you take in, made the revolving funds some higher amount than you would ever expect to spend because the controls are in place? You
Yes.
can't spend more than you
So,
have?
I'm glad you brought that up. So the legislature last year had it in one of the economic bills to actually, they provided some context to this because cities and towns were like, why do we have to go back every year and do this? This is ridiculous, you know? So what the legislature put into, it was one of like the empowerment acts, but it ended up not going through, and then the session ended and whatever. But the provision was that if your spending limit was going to be the same as the previous year, you didn't have to go back to town meeting to reauthorize it. So my recommendation, if it had gone through to all my departments, would be, you know, put it up here, because all of the parameters are in place to make sure that they don't spend what they don't have. And we wouldn't necessarily have to come back to town meeting every year to do that. So, but that didn't go through. So we are coming back every year to request the spending thresholds, and that's what you see here.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Ms. Barrett? I had a question that just popped out, just kind of came out when I was reading the library one. They're asking for a $15,000 revolving fund, yet they're only spending $4,000 to $5,000 a year. Are we expecting a book burning session, or why is that so much higher, 3 times higher than what they're normally doing?
It really, I mean, Bruce has got his hand up, so he probably asked that question at his subcommittee.
Indeed, we did ask that question in the subcommittee, and the guidelines that Ms. Barrett spoke to apply here as well. So they cannot spend more than they take in, and the balance is, I think, pretty low. It's in the memo provided tonight.
Right.
It's like $2,800 balance. So they're not going to spend $15,000. They're only going to spend what they take in.
But why would they ask for that much?
Well, my recommendation would be to anyone is to ask, put a cushion in there, because one, you never know. I mean, granted, there's probably not going to be a huge run on people returning their lost books and, you know, paying fines and that kind of thing, but you never know, you know, so that.
Okay. You all right?
It's not an appropriation, it's not tax money,
Right.
you know what I mean? It's not, it's just a spending threshold.
Mr.
guideline.
Newman, because of the rules in place, we were not concerned that the amount being requested for this revolving fund was greater than the balance or the receipts.
Okay. Any further? Yes, Mr. Malaguti, the floor is yours.
Thank you. A couple of questions I have. So first is the CPA Conservation Land Revolving Fund. I know that was in place when the town purchased many years ago the bogs for conservation. There was supposed to be the lease on those for the actual agricultural practices on there. But I think either the rights or some of those were sold and that no longer
That's right,
is
it's
in
all,
play.
it's all done.
So
So
should-
last year, so what has to happen, and we have suggested this to the Director of Energy and Environment, and really, it's just a matter of, because it's in our bylaw, so we would literally have to go back to town meeting and remove it from the bylaw. So the department head is just requesting 0 spending because the fund is not active. But we would have to go back to town meeting to remove it from the bylaw if it no longer applies. So hopefully at a future meeting, we'll go back. I reviewed these, the bylaws, and there are some sort of things that we have to do to modify, because there's been changes in titles of people who oversee these funds. So for example, Director of Energy Environment, in the bylaw, it says Director of Marine and Environmental Affairs. So there's some cleanup that we have to do anyway, and my suggestion is we're going to do it all at the same time, for everything.
Okay, thank you. The other one is the 1820 Courthouse Revolving Fund. I know that was for fees and use of the green outside to take care of the maintenance of the green / the courthouse and the marble staircase, if I recall the language correctly. Have we collected any fees so far over the course of the years from the use of that?
No, there's no one really in charge or overseeing that. To my knowledge, we don't collect any fees for that. So it's another one that may need to get removed from the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. And the last one that I have on here is the compost bin one. That one I know is being reauthorized for the amount that it used to be a couple or so years ago. The question I have was, why was it zeroed out last year? That it was request $0 for. Is it because there was ample funds in it, or because they just weren't implementing the program that year?
So it doesn't really matter if you have ample funds in it, you can't spend anything. So you can only spend when you have an authorized spending limit. So I can't really answer why they didn't, I can only foresee that maybe, because we've had some staffing changes, in that area as far as, who sort of oversees it. And now we have an assistant DPW director, James Downey, who sort of oversees it. So I'm not sure if there are plans now to use that for the compost bins. If someone's here to answer that, yes.
Bill Coyle, DPW Director. And last year, when we looked at the revolving fund, we also looked at how many compost bins that we had, and we were selling about 10 per year. And I don't know the exact number, but I know we had far more than that. So we felt we weren't going to need to purchase any more, but we sold 10 this year, and so we wanted to make sure we had funds to replace them going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Ms. Barrett or any of the revolving funds? Hearing and seeing none. Ms. Butler, would you be so kind as to make a motion to approve Article 2?
I make a motion to approve Article 2.
Thank you. And Mr. Dunn, would you be so kind as to second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. So we have a motion from Ms. Butler, a second from Mr. Dunn. Any discussion amongst the committee? Hearing and seeing none, we will vote on whether to approve Article 2 or not. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Bizzarro?
Yay.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
Okay, that's 13 voted in support, 0 opposed, 0 abstains. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends town meeting approve Article 2. Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Okay, that brings up the other article on our schedule tonight, and that's Article 13, Capital Improvements.
Yeah, so again, I will give an introduction to this article. This is an article that we have on the warrant every year, and this is the capital so-called budget of the town. We have a bylaw that every department who is requesting a capital project item that has a dollar threshold of $25,000 or more and a useful life of 5 years or more. Those projects have to be submitted to our Capital Improvements Committee, and the committee met on January 13th, and their role is to rank those projects and, looking at safety and if it's going to produce economic development or if, it's just needs to be, upgraded, those kinds of things. So they did their ranking, and so I provided 2 spreadsheets that were attached to this memo. One was in like the ranking order, so there were 47 general fund projects and then a few enterprise fund projects, and then the second report was just sorted by article, by town meeting. So some of the projects most of the projects that are being recommended are within Article 13 of the annual town meeting. So one of these reports is sorted by department within Article 13, and then the rest of the report are the other articles that you will see on the special town meeting warrant. And that memo and funding recommendation will come as a separate memo to you at a future date where you will, vote on that. So this memo is only for Article 13 projects. So one of these reports sorts it in that order by department. All of these projects, the backup material for each and every one, in the memo to you, I included the link on our website, which is the Capital Improvements Committee page, where every single project had their backup materials. And then included in the memo is the funding recommendation from myself and the town manager to fund the projects that total $21,738,444. It's a variety of funding sources, very similar to every other year that we do this. And there are a lot of projects on here, so I'll stop talking. And if you have any specific questions regarding any projects, departments are here to answer any of the your questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett. Do we have any questions for Ms. Barrett on any of the capital improvement items? Yes, Ms. Richards, the floor is yours.
I'm just going to make a suggestion and ask just for future clarity and to help us out. Instead of links, if we could just get the actual material emailed. Because just, to just go in, have to either print out all of the backup material or click on each link as we're going through this.
So you want every single project
Or just
in one
emailed.
PDF? Is
Yeah,
that what
sure.
you're referring to? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that.
Or even, separate PDFs. It doesn't matter, but in a place where, emailed
Well,
to us
they're
individually.
all, I mean, they're all at that link, and they're all PDF links within that link.
No, I understand, but
Okay.
as we go through, how many pages? We have 11 pages of these. So for each one has backup material.
So there's like
Or how many
three-page
pages?
spreadsheet.
Well,
Yeah.
so how many, oh, yeah. I'm
There's
looking-
47.
Sorry, I was looking at
47
something else.
general fund projects.
Okay, so 47.
Yep.
So if there's 47 links that we're going to be looking at,
Mm-hmm.
going through all of the backup materials for. So I suspect we're going to be here really late.
Well, usually you do all that before the meeting, you do your research, and
Yep.
if you have any questions, you ask your questions. Okay.
But I need the material in front of me, so I'm going to be hitting my link each time.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Lally, I see your digital hand. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. There's a feasibility study going on right now for Memorial Hall, but I did not see a reference to Memorial Hall in the capital plan. Is that because any construction is contemplated for beyond FY26?
Yeah, so it's in the 10-year plan.
Okay.
in a future year, so the feasibility is being paid for out of ARPA funds. So there is no capital request in this particular year for funding of that project. We're going to wait until that feasibility study is done, understand what the cost estimates are with regards to that building and, go from that point.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Lawler, the floor is yours.
Hi, Lynn, how you doing? For instance, the Cold Spring Hedge Elementary School study, that's already come and gone.
Nope, so that project is actually going to come before you in the special town meeting. It was ranked by the Capital Improvement Committee in January. It's going to be a separate, they did rank it number 1. So it's a separate article, and it's going to be on the special. So you will hear that at a future meeting. It's
Okay, so
not
this is
included in these materials.
This is a placeholder?
This is nothing. This is Article 13 of the annual town meeting.
Understood.
Yep. And it's only those items in the memo that are in the spreadsheet that are included in Article 13.
Got it.
Do you have a follow-up, Mr. Lawler?
I am following. Thank you.
All right, we aims to please. Okay, Mr. Malaguti, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The first one that I have for the schools, and it is let's see, I'm looking at my list. A12, the Plymouth North Main Entry Drain Install. So with that because I looked at the documentation earlier for that, is the project for that installing another drain and cleaning out and redoing the existing drains, or are you just adding just one drain?
Hi, good evening, Matt Durkee, Director of Facilities for the schools. Thank you for the question. So this project was developed over several occurrences of flooding of the main entry of the North High School. Excuse me. The original engineering design has one very small drain, almost like the size of a shower drain, placed in the middle of a bowl, which has been created by 3 different avenues of sidewalks coming down to the front main entry. So there's a lot of square footage where water is being caught and funneled down into this bowl area. It's right where there's a brick kind of North High School logo right in the front there, and that's where that drain is set. That ties into existing drain lines and goes to a catch basin alongside of the building. This plan includes engineering and then the actual installation of the drain work. Our plan is to do is to utilize the existing drain lines and cut through concrete and remove some brick and set in 3 slit drains which tie into the existing drain system. So we're removing the small shower drain and installing 3 slit drains at the entrance of the 3 sidewalk areas.
Okay, I'm only asking because in the documentation it said that there was another drain almost adjacent to it, but it was clogged by plant and other debris. And
Yeah, so that is it's a catch basin along the front of the building, and it was loaded with bark mulch and different planting materials, which will be cleaned out part of this whole process.
okay, thank you. The other question I have is for A39, the pickleball court drainage and pathway. I was wondering, because I know that it was talking about the sediment erosion that was basically causing this. Was this actually part of the scope and the design for these pickleball courts, or was this an unintended afterthought of this?
Hi,
She's
So,
Slusher's on the
I'm
line.
here.
Okay. Could you identify yourself, Ms. Slusher?
Yeah, so I'm Ann Slusser. I'm the recreation director for the town. So when we built the original Forges pickleball courts, the drainage was dug out, just not well enough. So now when the rain happens, the swells get filled with the sediment and fills it, and then the sediment just washes out onto the courts. So it was dug just not deep enough, and it wasn't angled enough to go into the drain. The drain already exists. It just needs to be dug out and angled better.
Thank you. And just a follow-up, Ann, is there going to be a better contouring to make sure that sediment doesn't go into the new one?
Yeah, so we planned this with engineering. So engineering came out and met with me, and they developed a plan for it to go flow better into that.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions for any of the department heads? Ms. Richards, the floor is yours.
So with regard to the school roofs, let's see, where am I? A17, Manomet Elementary, replace the rubber roof. On the outstanding balances, so it looks like that there's some outstanding money on the Burke's Law report for roofs for Manomet Elementary. Let me see, what was it? Federal Furnace, this is from 2020. Federal Furnace, West Elementary, Indian Brook. Is there any way you can capture some of that money?
I don't believe so. That's part of it's actually just finishing up a roof project. I believe that's the MSBA. Indian Brook, Federal Furnace, West Elementary. That project hasn't been closed out yet.
Okay. Do you anticipate closing that out in the near future?
Yes, yes.
We're looking at 5 years, yeah.
Yes, I inherited that project. We are coming to a conclusion. We actually just had closeout document meeting with building committee last week, and we're now working through the MSBA side of that closeout.
Okay, thank you.
Christine, what are you looking at? What's the balance that's available in that report? Because that report is from last year.
Yeah, understood.
So it
I
actually,
couldn't-
according to.
I don't have an updated balance.
The most recent balance, the balance is actually zero. So they have a PO open for $13,000, so it's going to be paid to the contractor when that project gets closed out.
Okay. I only have what was sent.
Because that's all what was available that was sent out to you. Yeah.
Okay, but the balance is zero?
Yep.
Okay. So none of these figures, I can't count on these figures?
Probably not, but if you have one, you can ask me what the current balance is, because I had these up.
There's a lot here. Okay.
So if I could just make a general comment
Yeah.
on all of these projects that are in the Burke's Law report. Every year, we ask the departments to review all of their outstanding projects, every year, almost twice a year. And we ask them, is the project complete? If it's not complete, what are your plans? Like, when are you going to complete it? And why you need the money, to be carried over into the following year. If a project gets closed out, it doesn't need to be carried over, it goes into free cash. So we're using free cash for the capital projects that are going town meeting. Anything on there that has an outstanding balance at the end of this year, and the project is complete, those amounts are going to be closed out and it'll go to free cash.
Okay.
Okay.
And, I mean, specifically, I was looking at, like, Memorial Hall. Nothing's been done since 2016, and it has a collective balance of 86,000.
I know that Carl's here, but they're doing a lot of work on Memorial Hall currently, right now. So they're probably spending that money down.
Can he answer to that?
Yep.
Hi, good evening. Carl Anderson, Facilities Manager. Would you mind repeating the question? I just stepped out.
Certainly. So one of my questions, April town meeting 2016, there was approximately a little bit more than 86,000 appropriated for work on Memorial Hall. One was brick repointing, one was repair brick veneer, and masonry ceiling. So it looks like it's all masonry work on the exterior, I'm assuming.
Yes, ma'am.
However, nothing's been spent as of yet.
That's correct, ma'am. We've just completed a study, a water intrusion study at Memorial Hall with a engineering firm called SGH, and we have just received the results with recommendations to seal the envelope, and we plan on dedicating that approximate $87,000 to that effort. There is a larger overall rehabilitation project scheduled or planned for Memorial Hall. However, that's sometime in the future. So our intent is to take that money that exists in, from town meeting April 2016 and kind of mitigate the water intrusion that's happening every time every time it rains and the wind blows, to kind of mitigate that temporarily, at least until we can get to the overall larger project.
Okay, so, yeah, it's been sitting there for a long time, so I'm assuming.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming that water's been coming in for that same amount of
The
time?
entire time. Yes, ma'am.
Do you foresee that that cost is going to go up, and the $86,031 is not going to cover that?
I don't have estimates right now. I think that money will go a long way, but you are correct in assuming that that is going to fall short somehow for sealing the entire building. We may be able to cover some of the largest problem areas. We know where the worst of it comes in through the building, and that's where we'll focus our efforts with that funding.
While you're there, also 159 Camelot, replace floor drains and oil/water separator. That's, looks like we expended $5,400, but we now have a balance of $259,000. That's
Yes,
a
ma'am.
fairly significant amount of money.
It certainly is, and I don't have any information.
Again, from 2016.
All right, I don't have any information on that project. I did a little bit of research. I couldn't come up with anything to find out what had been done. I think Mr. Coyle is going to step in and discuss that one.
Sorry, Carl. Yes, Bill Coyle, DPW Director, and I happened to go through the Burke's Law today and saw that as well, and I've noticed it last year as well. And I will say, it is a priority, but it is something that we haven't had time to get to, and it's not an immediate need. This isn't our wash bay that we really haven't been utilizing in the past few years, but we'd like to get this up and running. So we feel as though the money is needed for these improvements, but it's a matter of getting to that work and making that a priority. So it is something that we do feel is important, and obviously somebody did several years ago. It's just a matter of having the time to get to it and getting that project implemented. So we are going to move forward with it. It's just a matter of timing.
Is there a process in transferring that money for one of your other higher priority projects and then requesting the money for the floor drains at Camelot
Sure.
in the future?
I'll defer to Lynn, but I do think because it's specifically spelled out at town meeting for 159 Camelot, that we would probably have to go back to town meeting to repurpose it, or if we didn't spend it, it would go back to free cash and we'd request another project. So I think over the course of the next year, we'll have to make a decision, is this something we're able to advance? Because the money has been sitting there for quite some time, it is a priority, but if we just can't frankly get to it, then whether or not it goes back into free cash and we go back to town meeting at a later date. But right now, I would say my goal would be to move forward this year with it.
Because I think, yeah, what Lynn was just saying, that, you know, if it's still sitting in there at the end of the year, it's going to go, it's going to hit free cash.
Right, and she does reach out to us, and if it's something such as that, we do want to move forward with it. So I'm sure we can give a status update later in the calendar year where we are with that project.
Okay, and then roof replace, that was article in 2012?
Which, for what location?
No clue, because it says 5 LOC, Article 9.
That was several locations of DPW buildings, and Gary Gulski, who works for Carl, was just in my office recently, because the cemetery building over, right, that... Oh, I'm sorry. I was just trying to get confirmation from these guys that I knew what I was talking about. So the roof at the cemetery building at, is it Vine Hills? Is that the cemetery? Needs repair. So they're using that money for Vine Hill Cemetery. They're going to use it for any roof repairs or patches that need to happen. And I did talk to operations manager about that.
So what is LOC? What's that
Locations.
acronym?
Locations.
5 locations.
5 locations, yeah.
And of those 5, one
Yeah.
is the cemetery?
Cemeteries, yeah.
Well, again, that's 2012, I would,
Yeah, there's a
Probably
lot. I
jump
mean,
on
we've
that.
had, I mean, just to give these guys the benefit of the doubt, you know, they're new last year. And with, you know, facilities has always been a priority, and a lot of the projects that, you know, are on this list are ones that, you know, need to be addressed. And we're hoping, you know, that, as Bill said, you know, they're going to prioritize and get to them, you know, when they can, so. you know.
I have $35,000 in my printer budget from 12 years ago, but, you know, I can't replace printers
Okay.
all by myself. So, yeah, I understand, but,
Okay.
you know, it's,
Yep.
I'm not looking, you know, you can't look for more money until these other projects are finished, but, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Richards, for a deep dive. Mr. Lawler, the floor is now yours.
Just a kind of point of order. So in front of us, there's, how many projects would you say in front of us? How many projects? 40? 47 projects. So we either all have jobs, or we're all doing a lot of other things. So in order to have a question, so we bring up, for instance, Mr. Young, can I talk to you for, come on up.
If I could just make a general comment regarding, you know, we try to give you the materials before, the issue that Christine brought up about the link and
Yeah, I
trying to
don't
get
think
the
you know where
information.
I'm going somewhere
But
else.
I guess I just want to make a general comment. That's why you have a subcommittee, liaison from Advisory and Finance who sits on the Capital Improvement Committee. You actually have 2 members of your Advisory and Finance Committee that sit on the Capital Improvement Committee that have met with the departments and have gone through all of these projects and have asked several questions, because it's a whole day-long process. I just want to put that out there, just so that all the members of your committee know that. Okay.
Got it. Just out of curiosity, who were the people that were on those?
And
Gail
Ms.
and
Butler.
Bruce Howard.
Gail and Bruce?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And you're welcome to join us for any CIC meeting. They're
Gotcha.
open meetings, and they do last all day. And we go through every capital project.
Okay. And is there an improvement process that gets down to the other 13 of us, that things are going well and?
We rank our charter, our task is to rank the capital projects, which we've done and appears on the last spreadsheet
I have it.
in the packet. I would add that we group the capital projects by A, B, and C. So 1 through 15 were considered A priority. Down through 33 were the B priority, and everything beyond that is the C priority. So we rank them. We leave it to the department and division heads to only submit projects that they feel are appropriate,
Okay.
and we question them extensively, as I'm sure everyone here can attest,
Okay.
to understand the projects. Thank you.
So if I want to skim one of the projects, for instance, in IT, fiber over Phase 3, I assume there's a Phase 1 and a Phase 2. But when I look at the description here, it just tells me that basically, Joe, it's a continuation. It doesn't say anything.
So, yeah, this came up in the subcommittee meeting, and I resubmitted the original proposal for any of the multi-year projects. So I found the original submittal from 3 years ago, and I submitted it with the detailed scope of work for this Phase 3 of the project.
Okay. So essentially, Mr. Chairman, the two members that went through this whole process have reviewed each and every one of these projects and ranked them as to importance, but not of substance. What are they? What are they all? So what is the role of the other 13 of us to do at this particular point? Just go along and this is good, check it off, let's go? Is that where we are right now? I'm not being abstinent on anything. I'm just trying to, now that I'm getting my bearings finally after 3.5, 4 years, I'm saying, okay, listen, well, all these projects that are in front of us, I know there's a lot of spends here on categories 1 and 2 that I have a lot of questions on. So are we supposed to be diving into these particular projects that I have questions on, for instance, a tennis court replacement? Are these the type of deep dives that we do at this particular time?
Well, I think representatives of our committee have vetted that for us.
Okay.
And if you have particular concerns, I would absolutely bring that out in this meeting, but I believe that our two members have endorsed this, this recommendation. So you can take that as an endorsement and walk with it, or you could challenge and ask questions.
Okay. I'm ready to ask some questions.
The floor is yours.
I mean, let's go right into that tennis court for $800,000. I'd like to know a little bit about it, please. A little bit more about it than what I had read.
Good evening, Nick File.
By the way, I'm sorry. We're talking about a $320 million budget, that we're looking at as a group. And that's the cycle we're looking through right now. And it's not a matter of nitpicking. It's a matter of understanding $320 million. So I'm not going after anyone. I'm just trying to understand it.
Sure.
So, go ahead.
Thank you. Nick Fila, Parks and Forestry Superintendent. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for your question. These two park locations, Elmer Raymond and Briggs Field, the tennis courts are in deplorable condition. I'm sure Gail has my back on that one. We've tried to have them repaired. I've had them checked out by a couple different tennis court companies, and we've come to the conclusion that the only way to bring these back into shape is complete reconstruction of the courts. Each location has 2 courts. They will be, if approved at town meeting, they will be replaced with post-tension concrete. They'll be hybrid striped with pickleball and tennis, so people can play pickleball and tennis. But it's complete demolition of the existing courts and replacement with post-tension courts at both locations. Is there any specific question you have that I can answer about the article?
No, nothing specific, thank you.
Sure.
Unless someone else has something.
I'd like to.
Ms. Butler, the floor is now yours.
Thank you. I did look at these courts, and they were more than deplorable. You could kill yourself just walking on the courts, never mind trying to play in the courts. And I talked with Nick, and he was getting someone to repair the courts, if I remember correctly. And I asked him if he had seen the work that they had done, because I didn't feel that these courts could be repaired. They were so bad. And Nick went out and looked at the work that had been done and came back and contacted me and said, we're not going to use that person. Work is not good. It's not worth the money we're going to spend on this. We're not going to be able to do the courts this year, obviously. We're going to have to do something else. Nick went out and found a better company that uses different materials, and it sounds like it's going to be very good. So it's taken 3 years to get to this point on these courts. So I commend Nick on the work that he's done and look forward to having new courts that are playable.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you, Ms. Butler. If you want to follow up, there's a hand by Mr. Lally.
Go ahead.
I'd like to call on Mr. Lally. The floor is yours. You can't hear you. No volume.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Helps to lower the mic. Mr. Howard chaired a subcommittee that looked at all these capital requests. Has Mr. Howard had the opportunity to present the results of his team's efforts to this committee? Because maybe we've got the cart before the horse is my concern, and sort of addressing what Mr. Lawler has raised. Did I miss something in the process here?
No.
I'm talking to Mr. Howard specifically, or Mr. Neerman.
Mr. Howard, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We do not present the capital projects back to this committee. However, the resulting documentation, which is the Capital Improvement Committee's ranking, is included in your package.
Yep, okay.
And you'll see that this project was ranked number 15, so that's in the A group. We considered this a safety hazard and ranked it quite high relative to the other capital projects. I would want to also mention that there is the West Ball Courts sidewalk repave and stripe, which is identified as A23, is a similar tennis court project, but it's under the schools instead of recreation, or parks, excuse me.
All right, so my point is that, at least unlike DPW, where the DPW subcommittee and perhaps other committees make a formal presentation to FinCom, and then we all vote on it, and that material is circulated ahead of time, that's different for this particular subcommittee. Am I hearing that correctly?
I think this is the way.
That's what we're doing now.
Right.
Okay, I just, what we didn't get was, I thought, a report from the committee. Okay, thank you.
Okay, back to Mr. Lawler.
To follow up with Joe's comment, is that there seems to be something missing here.
So the role of the Capital Improvement Committee is to rank the projects. What you're reviewing right now is the recommendation from the town manager for the projects that are going before town meeting with the CIC ranking in them. And the information that we send you in your packet prior to this meeting has the information in it on all these projects. And if you research it and look at them and come up with your specific questions regarding these projects, that's what this meeting is for. So your role is to now recommend these projects, this article, to town meeting.
And can we separate any of these from
Yes, we can vote on them separately.
separately?
Yes.
Okay.
So do you want a motion in particular to separate out a project or projects?
Again, here we have 40-some-odd projects that we're slicing and dicing through in less than an hour. And it's again, it's our responsibility to utilize this ranking chart that we have in front of us, and then go to the description, and then figure out what the project is, and then ask the questions of the representatives that are here of the projects.
That is correct.
And then
there-
decide on whether or not these projects should be approved or not.
And there is no rush if you want to take the time. Now, again, we had two members of our committee that have endorsed this ranking. So we can trust their judgment in vetting, or we can make a motion and separate out ones that you do not feel belong in the ranking.
I just want to know from the other 14 of us, am I on the right track, or am I veering off to the guardrail? I just need some feedback from this membership.
Okay, so Mr. Lally, your digital hand was up. Do you want to take a shot at that?
Yes, I think the way I'm beginning to see this characterized is we had a subcommittee that reviewed the CIC recommendations, and essentially what we have before us now is a recommendation of the FinCom subcommittee on the capital improvement plan for approval. And that's how I'm seeing this. I have gone through the list, the bigger list. I've seen what they've included, and I'm prepared to support this when it comes time to vote on it, based upon their work. I'm satisfied with the work that they've done.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lally. Ms. Richards, did I see your hand go up? The floor is yours.
Well, for one of those rare occasions, I may agree with my colleague, Mr. Lawler, that I think what I'm hearing is we have the CIC, which is the Capital Improvements Committee, and their job is to rank these projects. And I guess I'm also going to ask a question, and vet all of them? So were all of them vetted with the knowledge of each and every one of them? So Ms. Butler can vet the tennis court ones, and ones that she's very familiar with. Mr. Howard may be able to vet, ones that he may be knowledgeable with, but the rest of the committee may have a different outlook, may look at these things a little bit differently, and may have different opinions on them. And this is where my issue is, and my issue is also that I would have to click on all of these 47 links to go through all of these. In fact, one of them that I looked at only had the cover page with no supporting documentation at all. So it's difficult for me to say, okay, yeah, this looks good, when, like, the Cold, here, I'm looking at the Cold Spring study is, there's no documentation with it, although I think we looked at it before. But some of these, there is no other documentation as I look at it. So to say that I want to pull out this one or this one or this one is difficult because I wasn't in those committees. No, I did not watch them. And no, I was not invited to them or assigned to attend those committee meetings. So I'm kind of at a loss as to, I would have thought we were going to go through them instead of just looking at a list and approving them. And are we approving just the ones that are ranked number one? Or are we approving the ones that are ranked number one and number two? Or are we just going to approve all of them, 1, 2, and 3? They're ranked for a reason, as far as, what the importance is. Are they all important? Or were other projects dropped off? So, yes, I have some questions about all of these, and those are my questions. Thank
Okay,
you.
so let me address, Ms. Barrett, could you explain how that works with A, B, and C? Is it what available funds to see how far you go down?
Yeah, so let me start at the beginning. So it starts way back in the summertime. So we ask each and every department to submit their 10-year capital plan. We review that plan with them when we meet with them to go over their budgets. We review specifically that first year, meaning the ones that are coming before us for 2026. And we interview every single department, the town manager, myself, the assistant town manager, and we go over every single project with them. And the town manager either recommends or not recommends that project to be moved forward to the Capital Improvements Committee. So all of these projects were vetted and gone through during that process and recommended to have the Capital Improvement Committee review them. Same process we did last year. We didn't recommend any projects to them that we could not afford or have a funding source for. There were several years back when we used to have Capital Improvements Committee go through a laundry list of 50 projects, and we only had funding for 20 of them. So, I mean, and the town manager says that's not what he wants to do. That is not a fruitful exercise, so we are really looking at, and each department is concentrated on looking at what they need, over the next 5 to 10 years, and only asking for those items that they really need in that first year. So there's a process where they have to provide their cover sheet, their backup. If there's missing information, you're certainly allowed. This meeting is usually why there's only 2 things on the agenda tonight, the revolving funds and capital. So if you had questions regarding some of the capital projects that were in these lists and your backup materials that you got last week, then certainly that's why we have the departments here to answer those questions. So did I answer the question? I don't know.
Ms. Richards? There were a lot of questions.
In listening to you tonight, because this is what happened a couple years ago when we were doing revolving accounts. There were so many questions about revolving accounts at one of these meetings that I said to Jeanette, we're going to put the revolving account information in their 3-ring binders so that when you sit with the departments, you have that information. You can ask questions if you feel it necessary, So next year, we're going to put the capital in your 3-ring binder so that when you meet with your departments, you can also ask them about and we'll make sure that the capital improvements have already ranked them, that the town manager is recommending, and then whatever goes in the 3-ring binder is, you'll have that information so that you can ask those questions of your subcommittee at that time. However, that's not what we did this year. It's not what we've done any year, but we've always provided the information online for each and every project.
So I do remember last year going over the capital improvements, and I do remember having a presentation, having the department head come up and doing a presentation.
That's only on the project that you specifically asked for a presentation.
Well, I do remember Mr. Young coming up and discussing the fiber,
Yep.
the digitization.
Yeah, and it's probably because there were questions regarding those projects.
Yeah, I don't believe we went through every single one in the presentation.
We've never done presentations for
Yeah.
each and every one at this meeting.
And that may, and it may be we just have a lot of them, I'm just, these are.
There are a lot more this year than there have been in years past. That's true.
So that may be, I think, the issue that we had the documentation, we didn't have to go, diving into the website looking for
The
them.
last 2 years, we've had the information online. We've never provided the documentation to you in the backup.
Okay, I'm not going to dispute that. But like as far as, and I'm not going to argue over, the fiber phase 3 because it's a phase 3. But there, so Mr. Young said he supplied his supporting documentation, yet the only thing online is the cover sheet, is the plan request.
Yeah, so
So if he
unfortunately,
submitted
the
it, it
additional
didn't get in
information,
there.
we didn't upload that to the website, so I apologize for that.
Okay, Ms. Richards, I'm going to come back to you if you
Certainly,
have further
thank-
questions, but for the benefit of the committee, I know Ms. Butler wanted to make a comment, and I have Mr. Dunn waiting on deck, and Mr. Green in the hole.
Okay. Yes, our committee does get together. We spend all day together. It's a long day, and we go over a lot of information. There were five of us this time. We did not all agree on what should be number 1, number 2, number 3. We went with a majority. So when you asked, did we all agree? No, we didn't. So that can explain some of it. So I just want to make that comment.
Okay, thank you for that. And Mr. Dunn, the floor is now yours.
I just had a comment as well. This is similar to, I think, the discussion we had about the school budget, where suddenly we're asking for something different than we've had for the entirety of how this committee has gone. So I don't think we can expect to just receive different materials without asking for them. So I think if that's people want more information for next year, they can request that, but we didn't request it this time, and this is how it's always gone.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn, and I do believe that Ms. Barrett's suggestion for next year is an excellent one, and I think it will benefit everybody on the committee, so we won't have a repeat of this kind of surprise meeting, if you will. Any other? Mr. Green, you're up, and the floor is yours.
Great. I just have actual questions about some of these that I think town meeting folks would be interested in, or they're going to ask us questions about, so wanted to vet those through. So the first is for Chief Foley, just about the fire engine replacement. If we could just get some general background on the status. So as I read the memos, just words of wisdom, current condition, and what we're looking for.
Okay, and this is Fire Chief Dana Flynn. I'm sorry, Foley.
And I'm sorry, Fire Chief Neil Foley, thank you.
It's about the fire engine.
Fire engine, what's your specific
Just the
question?
two capital project borrowings for the fire trucks and just what the current status is. And
We have a replacement schedule for the fire apparatus as it is. Typically, we get about 10 years of frontline service, and then what we try to do is send it out for a intensive rehab, so then we get an additional 5 or 10 years out of it afterwards, whether it's 5 additional years of frontline or we use it as a spare. This particular engine will end up replacing the current engine one that it has already undergone a significant rehab. It is in service. It's over its 10 years. We're hoping to get a couple more years out of it frontline until this one comes in. But when this engine comes in, it's actually going to replace one of our reserve engines that's considerably old and outdated and has a lot of problems that we're not going to be able to keep it running for that much longer. So it'll end up replacing that. But given that, it's about a 3-year lead time on an engine, we have to come to town meeting now to make that request because that lead time could change and extend, which is typically what's been happening over the years. Used to take about, 12 to 18 months to get an engine built. Now we're looking at 3 years plus. And before it was about a 3 to 6% price change year to year. Now we're looking at about 9 to 12. So every year that we put it off, it becomes more expensive and then potentially could be extended out even further. So that's why it's on this year's capital.
Excellent. And then the pumping engine?
The pumping engine, that's what we were talking about, the pumping engine. And then the aerial ladder truck, same thing, except that one, it's the only aerial we have. We do not have another tower ladder. We have other ladder trucks. We have 2 other ladder trucks, but this is the only tower ladder that we have. It's a very specific, specialized piece of equipment. We don't have a spare, and it's about a 4-year lead time, which will bring it up closer to that 25-year mark, which the NFPA says at that point that if we have any major mechanical problems with it, I have to consider taking it off the road completely. We can't repair it. So it would be dangerously close to that if we don't get that within that time frame. And that's, again, I moved that up several years on the capital schedule because our dealer representative told us that it was about a 4-year plus lead time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Is this the same engine that we discussed last year that was in the shop that was waiting for a part?
No, this is another one.
This is another.
Yeah.
What is the
We actually
status?
took delivery of replacement engines this year for that.
So you're all set with that one?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, I have a couple more. If you
Yes.
Bear with me. Next one is for the harbor master regarding town wharf extension. I think we talked about this last year. It didn't go through, but just wanted to see where we were.
Good evening, Chad Hunter, Plymouth Harbor Master. This project probably looks familiar because we did present this at fall town meeting 23. And so since then, there was a concern about impact of the cruise line coming in. We've done a year with the cruise line this past season, 25 visits, and we were able to effectively manage commercial operations and the cruise ship being in port. So we're hoping to go back to town meeting to have a second look at this. The town did sign a 10-year contract with ACL, so understanding that they're going to be coming in for the next 10 years, we would like to resubmit this proposal.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunter, you had made comments to us about during windy conditions, the cruise ships don't come in because there isn't adequate tie downs. Is that correct?
Yes, this extension is this extension is twofold. So for anybody that saw the cruise ship when it was tied up here, you noticed that the bow actually extended beyond the pier by about 60, 70 feet, which is fine when conditions are okay. The concern being here is the way that it's secured to the pier. If we were ever to get squalls or any wind events, they did have to cancel 3 trips last year just because of the conditions. Obviously, as the frequency of their staying in Plymouth increases, the likelihood of running into a weather event also increases. So this would make it safer for the cruise ship to be there. But the added benefit to this, the inside can also be used for commercial dockage. So not only do we extend that face, make it safer for the cruise ship, but we also gain some space for the commercial boats to dock on the inside.
You good?
Correct. Worked out really well. It was a bit more staff intensive. We had harbor master staff on the pier during the cruise ship arrivals, departures, and during the day to manage commercial fishing access and passenger access. I think it worked out really well. I don't think they're going to be at town meeting saying otherwise, so I think we've met the expectations on both sides, and it worked out really well.
All right.
Going back to Mr. Green.
Thank you. I'm good on the harbor master, and then last one I had was for the school. Thank you very much. Just wanted to get a general idea of the soccer turf replacement and what that conditions were now.
Matt Jarkey, Director of Facilities and Schools. Thank you for the question for the North High turf replacement. So it has reached its usable, at the end of its usable life. It's a safety concern. So we would be taking up the current turf and then replacing that. We've been working, we got that quote. We've worked with this company in the past, or the Plymouth Schools has. Is that Cape Nile? Rad Sports. So what, do you have a specific question about the turf?
Is it just worn out, or is it like a toxic chemical concern? I know that's been kind
No,
of
it's the
playing
wear.
around.
It's the wear of it.
Okay.
Seams coming apart. They have a usable life, and it is at the end of it now.
Okay. Thank you.
Passed.
Okay, Mr. Lawler, and then we're going to go to Mr. Lally.
So, how old is this field?
20. Just over 12. Just over 12 years.
So every 12 years, we have to spend 800 Gs, basically?
10 years is the
10 years?
is
10
the
years?
forecasted usable life of a turf field.
Time for sod. Well, I'm concerned. How many fields we have like this?
We have the North High School soccer football field. We have turf baseball fields, softball fields at the North High complex. South High has their soccer football field along with, I believe, 2 other baseball, softball fields.
And there's no patching, you don't patch, this type of thing?
There has been patching. I believe 3 or 4 years ago, during the summer, 4th of July festivities, we had a couple of fireworks lit off on the North High baseball field, and they were able to patch that.
On this particular project, patching is out of the question?
Correct.
And we're okay spending $800,000 on a field every 10 years? Is that what it is?
I would prefer to have grass
I would too.
myself, but,
Throw a sprinkler
but
system in there and,
we've moved to
have
these
at it.
turf fields, and I think that our representatives can discuss the pros and cons that have led them to this direction. But yes, we would need to replace these artificial turf fields if
So
we're
it's-
going to go that way.
So, Mr. Chairman, it's all about the integrity of this committee. So, we, as a committee, have to go in front of the precinct caucuses. And guaranteed, we get pelted with questions about expenditures like this, and articles like this, and expenses like this. And if we're not, like, for instance, Mr. Hunter was up before, and he had some insight to the extension of the wharf that I was not privy to, which would have been great ammo to use when we're getting pelted by questions by the precinct caucuses. Again, you know, I guess I'm questioning the process itself. Whereas, okay, half an hour ago, let's take a vote. Any questions about these projects? And now it's up to us to dig. I would prefer, this is what I would prefer, ultimately, this is where I'm going. Lynn, how much money we talking about in all these requests right now, basically? Just rough the number for me. Just the bottom line.
It's on your sheet.
21 million. $21 million of expenditures is, I think it's worth next year possibly having presentations on these projects like this that are coming up. Give us a little bit more ammo, because when you're in these meetings with these precincts, they could be, terrorizing. And if you're not prepared, and you don't know what's going on with the projects themselves in detail, we lose credibility as a committee. And that's what I'm trying to preserve here. The education of this committee so that we can pass it on to town meeting, because that's what we're all about. And I've been put in the situation in the past years being peppered. And I think I do a pretty good job of knowing what's going on. I think I spend a lot of time at it, a little bit more than normal. Really trying to dig, really trying to understand issues. But maybe for next year we have presentations. And that might help, rather than just shooting through $22 million worth of projects.
Then I would suggest having at least a couple of nights of splitting it up, because you'll be here until 3, 4, 5 in the morning.
Yep.
And most of us will be asleep by then.
Yep. Yeah. It's a heavy lift.
So in the meantime, you're certainly welcome between now and when we sit in front of the caucus meetings to call any of these ladies and gentlemen and ask those questions. Now, again, we had 2 people that had vetted out and brought that to us, so you can take their word for it, or you could further dig if you're not comfortable with that.
I think what I'm talking about is probably a different level of education for the general populace of the 50 members here, of being educated as to the criteria of spend. What is it all about? I don't want to be popped by someone in a caucus meeting about Joe's spending on his 3rd level of project. I mean, it's just the matter that we just need a little bit more foundation and preparatory to get in front of the town meeting people. It can be challenging.
Okay, duly noted. I'm going to go to Mr. Lally. The floor is now yours.
Thank you. With regards to the turf replacement project, having the occasion to have replaced a few over the last 40 years, I think the price is reasonable. The cost of turf maintenance is not as cheap as you think, and there's also a safety factor associated with turf fields. One of my questions for the school facilities manager is, do we have any concerns about the underlayment underneath the turf? Because that could be a surprise expense, and has that been tested? But otherwise, I think the project as proposed is quite reasonable in terms of the scope, and the lifespan of the turf is a wearable item, and they just wear out after a while. So if you could answer the question about testing of the underlayment, because that could be a nasty surprise if it's not in good shape.
Sure. Thank you for the question. The contractor that we worked with did not recommend the replacement of the foam pad underneath.
Okay. Thank you.
But I do want to add, Adam Blaisdell, Business Administrator for Plymouth Public Schools. As Matt said, The lifespan is 8 to 10 years on these turfs. We're over 12 at this point in time. If you were to go for a walk and take a walk on the North High turf, and then you go down to South High School, you will see a significant difference between those two turfs. And you will be able to see, basically, if just like I said, by walking on it, it's really getting to be a safety concern. You might look at the turf and you might say it looks fine, but take a walk on it and you'll feel the significant difference between the two. And really, at this point in time, really we are looking at it as starting to be a safety concern for our kids and anyone else that uses that turf. So we are beyond the useful life of that turf, and we want to make sure that this gets replaced sooner than later.
And there are quite a few activities that go on those fields, so they're not unused, which is part of being in a town that has recreation and sports and athletic teams. And, you know, sometimes you have to pay the price to make it the community that we have. I'm not saying for or against, but, you know, it comes at a price.
$100,000 a year, essentially, for one field.
Yep, there you go. Mr. Dunn, I see your digital hand. The floor is now yours.
I'm just curious how it compares to taking care of a grass field, because we're acting, I think right now, like it's free to take care of a grass field, but you have to seed it and take care of it and maintain it and everything. So I wonder if we know what that would cost, because it might not be as much of a difference as we think.
Yes, thank you for the question. It really depends on the site of these fields, but natural turf fields are expensive, as you mentioned. One other element of natural fields, a negative, is the requirement to rest the field. So you can't, on a turf field, you can play on that field year-round, as long as the weather is allowing you to do that. On a natural turf field, you cannot play on that field year-round. It will have to sit for sometimes an entire athletic season, and then it also takes away from community use, because the priority of these athletic fields at school locations are for the students and the students' athletics. And when you have natural turf fields, the time allowed on that field shrinks when it's open to the public because of the resting aspect. You look at different sports, for instance, lacrosse, you know, they wear in different areas. Lacrosse play, you have holes dug out in front of the goals and at the center of the field. Football, right along the hash lines and on the sidelines. Soccer is a wider field than football, so then you're encroaching on the soccer play with dugout turf on the sidelines. So it really comes down to the will of the community, which type of surface they would like. Natural turf requires a lot more maintenance, but not to take away from artificial turf, which requires maintenance as well.
Just to add to that statement, when those two schools were built, there was a lot of conversation. I wasn't involved with that at the time, but there was a lot of conversation between which to go with, either turf or grass. And the decision at that point in time was to go with turf.
Okay, and Ms. Richards, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Pizarro and Ms. Butler.
So is this for the soccer field? Is it specifically for a soccer field, or is it a multi-use?
It's multi-use.
Okay. In the quote that you got, there were quite a few exclusions. Any removal of existing pad, union wages, which I assume you have to pay prevailing wage?
Yes.
So that's not included?
This is a project, when we talk about labor and so forth, we'll have to go out to bid. It's not, this quote is really just for estimation prices. This is a project that will have to go out to bid. We may be able to purchase the turf itself from one of the state contracts, but overall, this is a bid project. So all of that information, when we're writing the bid, will be included. We will have to put prevailing wage, we will have to put all that information in the bid.
Okay. And just one more question. In my just quick Googling, which I know is probably not a verb.
No, it is. It is, I think it is.
There are a couple of different types, ones that last 8 to 10 years, ones that last, or at least 8 to 10, is what it said, at least 8 to 10. The other one was at least 20 years. So if we could just look at both types, because we may be able to get the at least 20 for a little bit, so that it's not such a issue every year, or every
Understood.
8 years, or every 10 years. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to Mr. Pizarro. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I have a question for Finance Director Ms. Barrett, if she's still available.
She is.
Thank you. So, Ms. Barrett, my question is, this year's capital request is a 21.7 mil. Last year's was around 33.7. I'm just curious on how is that determined? Is there a limit that you guys go by? I would have thought with if it was based on a ratio of revenues. Could you just explain that for me? I'm not very familiar with government finances, but in a corporate world, it's depreciation and fall off. Some of that plays into part.
Yep. So we look at a couple of different things. As far as anything that's going to be funded through borrowing, we always budget between 6 and 8% of our regular operating budget to be principal and interest on debt service. So anytime debt falls off, we replace it, we recommend particular projects to be funded through debt. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way is our other funding sources that are available to pay for capital. And last year, because we work on this 5 to 10 year capital plan with the departments, and we sit with them every year and we go over it, this particular year, we certified our free cash. We had $20 million in free cash, which was higher than normal. And that had a lot to do with the PEC agreement and other things that happened in a particular year that happened sort of after the fact, after we went to town meeting. So there was some savings in the budget. So we're, in this particular year, the projects that were submitted and reviewed by the town manager, we were able to fund those projects. So we have different funding sources. We have other available funds. We have free cash. We have borrowing, federal grants. A lot of the projects could be because they got grants for a specific project, and then we have a town match that we need to do. So we look at it every year. On a normal basis, sometimes this article, for amounts that we fund through free cash, are usually between like 8 and 12 million. That's basically what we spend on an annual basis for capital out of the free cash.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And thank you, Mr. Pizarro. And Ms. Butler, the floor is yours.
Okay, I guess this question would be for Matt. I'm assuming that parents do not pay to have their children play sports. They do pay.
Yes, there's an athletic user's fee.
Okay, there is. All right, I thought I heard that there wasn't, so, okay.
That's fairly new, isn't it?
No, the fee has been in existence for years. This year we raised it. It used to be, I believe, $135. Now it's $175 per sport, per sport, per season, per child, with a family cap of $875, I believe it is.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Mr. Malaguti, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and I'm trying not to make this a round of musical chairs for all the department heads. Last one I have for the schools, and then I have a couple other department ones. As we were talking about earlier about the tennis courts for the 2 playground facilities, you also have one for the schools, but instead of the ones that are being done for the playgrounds of the post-tension, these are just going to be asphalt relay. What is the expected life for this repair?
Thank you for the question. So in talks with the contractor, we're looking, 20 years on that work. This is not the post-tension concrete. This is not a complete replacement of the tennis court, nor the basketball court. It is a replacement of the sidewalks. This is at West Elementary School. This is a process of keeping the existing fence system, which is also a high price when you're doing these tennis courts. So we're removing a section of the fence and getting the machine in there that grinds up the first layer and scraping that up and then laying down a finish coat over that, painting, sealing. Same with the basketball court, and the sidewalks will be removed and then repaved.
Thank you. And with that, what is the use, or the volume of use of the tennis court for this facility?
So this is an elementary school. Elementary recess takes place in this area. It's right in the same vicinity of their playground, their basketball courts, and the tennis court. This is in West Plymouth. The community uses this space quite a bit on off-school hours. Everyone grew up in that area, and we used to play street hockey on the court quite a bit. So and then the athletic fields there, the soccer fields, if anyone's been by on the weekends in West Elementary, are in full swing with athletics out there, and there's always, families that are going over to the playground or utilizing those other spaces that we have.
I think in the last part of this one is, have you considered the proposal for the playground ones of striping it for also pickleball there too?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. That was brought up in our capital plan meeting, and if funds allow, we are going to try to have that striped for pickleball as well.
Great, thank you. My next one is for the parks. This will be a quick one for you. This one back on the tennis courts, just a question of the volume of usage of these courts for that.
So we haven't had a study done, but I will say they're used every single day, weather pending. I know, working with the folks that use Briggs, they've been known to bring snow blowers out and clear the snow off the court so that they can play during the winter. So I'd say they're heavily used.
And the last question, I don't know if Ann is still on, if you could answer this. Is there any programs that are run on these 2 courts like there are for other facilities, or are these just play at will?
These 2 specific locations are play at will.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ann is still on the line. Did you want her to weigh in?
Certainly. And I know that I was just answered by Nick about the use of the courts and if there was any programmatic activities on them, especially for the Elmer Raymond one. Is there looking at possible programming, or is it just too small of a size for that?
So right now, we don't run any programs out of either of those 2 locations. They're more open for recreational use for individuals to use at their will, instead of reserving them for our activities. It leaves those courts available to the general public. We use them down at Hedges Pond, West Elementary School. We have a recreation program at, and places like Forges Field. So we leave those open for the public.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair. I just want to mention that during the open space listening session that was held recently at the library, there were a lot of comments that were added to the feedback that cited the issues at the Briggs Field, specifically the tennis courts and the basketball court and the safety of those facilities. So that was, we're very much, when we heard the proposal at CIC, we were very much in favor of addressing this.
Thank you. And just to comment on that, if I may, I actually met with the Open Space Committee, I want to say it was just a couple days ago. It's all blending together with the working through the wind, being the tree warden, but and we did discuss their concerns thoroughly, and they were very happy to hear that I'm proposing replacement of that court.
Thank you. And the last I have is back for either Lynn or the DPW, depending who will be able to answer this. So for the A28, the roadway improvement program preservation, I believe that's part of the 3-year cycle or 5-year cycle that we fund through the excess in excise revenue.
So there's a couple of different ways that we fund roads. So one is one that we did prior to last year. We did 3 rounds of $5 million each over like a 6-year period. We did $15 million worth of road repairs, and we borrowed for that, and that is being paid for out of the Pavement Management Stabilization Fund with motor vehicle excise money that's in excess of what we budget every year. The last 2 years, we're using general fund revenues, free cash for roads. We did it last year, and we're doing it again this year. So that those monies are theoretically coming from free cash also, because not free cash, but motor vehicle excise, because motor vehicle excise is a general fund revenue.
Okay, and that pertains to all roads, both paved and gravel, correct? That are public, not necessarily private.
No, the gravel roads is separate.
Okay,
So that's a separate article. We've got money left. If you saw it on your Burke's Law there, there's some money left.
yeah,
in
that's
that.
why I was questioning, because I wanted to make sure.
So that's the gravel road one. This one is for all, I don't know if you want to get up and answer this, but it's for like all roads, public and private, that are paved, not gravel roads,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
Bill Coyle, DPW Director. I can just add a little bit about the pavement program that James Downey and I have been working on very closely. Last year, we proposed about 30 miles total, and to date, we've completed about 25 of those 30 miles between chip sealing. We have 17 miles of chip sealing and approximately 8 miles of paving between either resurfacing or reclamation. And we still have more roads to do in the spring that were identified previously. This $5 million would go towards the next round. We did spend all of the $5 million that was allocated last year. In addition to the town funds of $5 million, we also get Chapter 90 funds, which is about $1.6 million. And I don't have the exact numbers, but I think last year we expended somewhere close to $6.5 to $7 million total.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, and I'm going to go to Mr. Dunn and then to Ms. Richards. The floor is yours, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you. I have a question for Chief Flynn.
It was going to happen at some point, Chief Flynn. This is the 7th inning stretch for you.
For all of us.
Evening, Dana Flynn, Chief of Police.
I just was wondering about the armored vehicle. Do we only have one, and we're replacing the one we have, or do we have more than one?
No, we just have the one. So it's 2008. For years, we had to store it outside because of we really had no facility for it.
our issues now are saltwater related with the chassis and the armor plating, as well as the ballistic windows.
And there's
So just the one-
a grant that'll pay for half.
So we were notified that we have been approved for a grant funding in the amount of $200,000. So just under half. The makeup will be for the outfitting of radios and whatnot.
And just out of curiosity, how often has this had to be used?
So we are part of the Metropolitan Law Enforcement Council, 39 other police departments around where we share equipment and personnel. So the current one we use at minimum once a week for training. The SWAT team has to maintain the firearms proficiency, and they use that vehicle and numerous call-outs throughout the week.
Thank you.
Mr. Dunn, would you care to rent it out for a weekend at some point?
Of course.
Thought that's where you were going with this. Thank you, Chief Flynn. Okay, Ms. Richards, thank you for reminding me. The floor is yours.
Actually, I have one question and one comment. Ms. Barrett, I would like to you don't have to get up. I did find the all projects combined link on the bottom on the CIC page, which was helpful, although then I started not being able to find anything. So the pages next year will be really helpful, and I appreciate it. And my other question was the White Horse Cemetery project. So there was only one page on there, and I'm unclear as to what that is. Yeah.
I believe Diane McGuire may be online, but I'll do my best to try to answer that question. So for this particular project, we currently do not have access to the cemetery. There is one of the neighbors that are allowing us through their property to get in there to maintain it. And Diane, you can jump in after if you want to add anything, but I'll do my best based on our meetings. So this is for us to be able to build an access roadway into the cemetery. So we've been working with the abutter. There was an easement that was taken at town meeting back in the 70s. There's some discrepancy whether or not that easement was in full force and in existence, but we have worked with the abutters. They have indicated they will allow us to go in and construct an access drive to get to the cemetery. So we're hopeful that if this is passed at town meeting, we can go out to bid and construct this. It's been designed internally with our engineering department. So it's something that we're very hopeful that we'll be able to do. And I'll ask Diane McGuire if she wants to add anything, because I know this is something she's been working on quite a bit too.
Sorry, before that, I had no idea there was a cemetery in, is this down White Horse Beach?
No, and
No.
Diane
Okay.
can explain it better.
Okay.
This is actually the
Perfect.
original burial hill, Diane?
It is. So it's the original burying hill. In some ways, it's older than Burial Hill. So it's a long, kind of complicated story, but right now there's no access for the public to get into the cemetery at all, and very limited access for our staff. The very old graves of veterans and some of the original founders of some of the churches and such in Plymouth. So we're working, and the reason we weren't able to include any more really kind of details is we're working closely with the abutter to see what way they want to go. We're trying to be as open with them as possible. They did come in and meet with us a couple of weeks ago and express what they would like to see done. So we are getting to the point where we're getting more comfortable with what we'll be able to accomplish, which is getting the public in there and being able to provide a few parking spaces on this cul-de-sac for people visiting the cemetery as well. It's an issue. I get a lot of calls, particularly in the summer, for people trying to get into the cemetery and they simply cannot. So it does need to be addressed. It's kind of a developing a developing project that we've been working closely with engineering and the neighbors as well. So we hope to, our ultimate goal is to get a good access in there and to do some work in there as well. We can't get in there to do tree work, we can't get in there to fix the fence, to make sure the sign is in decent shape, and to do some stone work. So this is the beginning of what I hope will reopen Whitehorse to the public. And yes, it is in there. It's an interesting cemetery that unfortunately we can't get in right now.
Is there any chance that we can get some money from Historical Society?
I don't think so. I did look into that a little bit. I think that it sounded like something, that was a good idea, but it's sort of it's more of an access issue. It's not the stone. Once the stones are, once we can get in there, it may be that we can get some money for some of the headstones repair, like we did in Burial Hill. But I don't see, from what I've been able to look at, any real funds simply for access.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that explanation. Okay, any further questions for staff? And hearing and seeing none. Mr. Green, would you like to make a motion to approve Article 13?
So moved.
And Mr. Howard, would you be so?
Before that, we have a second on this motion. I just want to check with Mr. Lawler and see if he wanted to exclude any capital items from an overall vote for Article 13. Mr. Lawler?
No.
Then I second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have a first from Mr. Green. We have a second from Mr. Howard to approve Article 13. Any discussion amongst the committee here? Mr. Malaguti, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Tonight, I know that members got information. I asked Jeanette to send it, and while the information isn't as up to date, I figured that it would be a good avenue for members to look at to see what projects have been done in the past, what is out there. And I know that Lynn, the department heads, do a good job, and I know Lynn and I have a history back and forth about Burke's Law, going back and forth years on this, but I figured that this is a good thing for the committee to look at, to see what's actually there, because we're all human. There may be one that may be forgotten, that may not be known about with department changes and all that, but I figured that it would be good to have this so we can see in the future if there's something that could be intertwined that maybe has been looked at but didn't get the credit that deserves, or that the entire direction pivoted in the future. And I think that this would be a good thing, even though the information is a little out. It's good for us to reference, and then Lynn can update us if the thing is still active, closed out, and all that, but for our decision-making in the future for certain projects. The only other comment that I have is this is up for discussion for the committee, but I know that between the questioning back and forth, there's been a lot of, as I called it earlier, musical chairs of each department head basically coming up many, many, many times based upon each individual. I was wondering if in the future we could ask, like in the sheet right here, we could say, does anyone have any questions of the school department? And then we'll go through that. And obviously there may be questions that come up later on that were not thought of, but so that we don't have them basically coming back and jogging back and forth multiple times in a session. Thank you.
An excellent idea. We'll put that in the record. Thank you, Mr. Malaguti. Any other comments from our committee? And hearing and seeing none, we are going to go to vote whether we approve Article 13 or not. Ms. Butler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
And Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
And so we have 13 approved, 0 opposed, 0 abstentions. The Advisory and Finance Committee recommends to town meeting to approve Article 13. We want to take a moment to thank everybody who got up and gave us answers, and also the people that were available who were not called on. Thank you for your time and being here as a resource. You know, I feel you guys are doing a good job, and we really appreciate having you as a resource to answer questions. So, thank you all. And girls. Okay, so let's see. Now we're going to move on to new and old business. Just wanted to update everybody that we have not forgotten about Article 20, which we had discussed on January 8th, which was the Eversource Plymouth North. We are trying to get all the applicable parties to agree to come. I mean, there are a few. We have legal, we have Eversource. We have to, no, we're just, yeah, well, our reputation does precede us. So we are still working on that. So that's what we have going on. So just in case people were following and didn't understand why I didn't bring up the minutes of the Jan 15 meeting, we will be approving those at the next meeting. It was not an oversight. So expect those from Jeanette in the next week. Yes, Mr. Green. Yeah, Mr. Green.
I just wanted to extend a thank you to our CIC representatives. I thought what you both added was very helpful, and I came in kind of skeptical of some of these things, but now I've learned a bit about what you're doing, and I appreciate the details. So thank you.
Amen. Okay, any other?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I also want to commend Bruce and Gail on, it was a lot of work, you know, to spend all day at this. And in no way that I was insinuating anything about lack of integrity or anything like that. It's just, I guess, the process is an issue, maybe. But I want to commend you people, both of you, for the dedication and hard work that you put into this, because it is an awful lot of work. This committee is an awful lot of work. You really have to be committed to it. You really have to know your stuff if you want to participate and make sense. And thank you, Bruce. Appreciate it. And thank you, Gail. Thank you so much.
Excellent. I'll second that. Yes, Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Lawler. I do read through all the capital requests. So I follow all the links and read all of the write-ups that are provided. And as Ms. Butler will attest, I even complain when there isn't adequate documentation provided to the committee. So no offense was taken. I understand ANF's need to understand these capital requests, particularly when you're questioned in front of the caucuses. If anyone has questions about any of the capital projects, certainly you can reach out to Ms. Butler or me, and we'll do our best to address any questions that you have.
Well, I'll make sure I schedule you two for all of the caucuses.
You do already, so thank you.
Okay. Any other new, old business? No? Okay, is there any public comment? I don't see anybody online. We have a public. Okay, no public comment. My favorite part of the night is, thank you. So do I have a motion from Mr. Lally to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. And Mr. Lawler, would you have the pleasure of adjourning before midnight tonight?
Can we please? Please? Adjourn.
Keep begging. Thank you. We have a first from Mr. Lally and a second from Mr. Lawler to adjourn. And I will start with Ms. Butler. Do we
Yes.
adjourn or not?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
Mr.
yes.
Dunn.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Lally?
Yes.
Mr. Lawler?
Yes.
Mr. Malaguti?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Pizarro?
Yes.
Ms. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Ms. Tompkins?
Yes.
Mr. Trudell?
Yes.
And it's unanimous, 13 say we adjourn, 0 oppose, 0 abstain, and we are hereby adjourned at 8:56 PM.